Well, hello there, EFD squad, and welcome back to another episode of Continental Club, where I'm joined by these fine gentlemen. That's Ginger and Miles of Smiles. It's Patrick Van Straten to talk about some of the hottest topics in European football. Now, last week, lads, I was inundated with messages and inquiries on my Twitter as to what the hell was going on at Crystal Palace following Frank de Boer's sacking after just 77 days. Steve Parish, the chairman, has now gone through 9 managers in 7 years at the helm of the club. Despite this actually being Crystal Palace's most successful period in the Premier League, they've now been there for 5 consecutive seasons. So, swings and roundabouts, but ultimately, what do you think to the firing of Frank de Boer, Joseph, and the hiring of Roy Hodgson?
I actually think that the hiring of Frank de Boer in the first place was incorrect. Wasn't the right man for that squad. It was a completely incompatible situation. You had a manager who wanted to play one way, a squad that was set up to play in a completely different way. It was a polar opposites here. He didn't get enough backing in the transfer market. The likes of Mamadou Sakho arriving late didn't help him at all. I know that Frank de Boer has bemoaned that publicly since. Also, some of the signings, the likes of Fosu Mensah, Loftus-Cheek on loan, not quite the players, in my opinion anyway, that Frank de Boer needed to change that team around so drastically. And then to ask him to do that in 3 games is even more insane. You're giving him a squad that doesn't work in a situation that he wants to implement, and you're only giving him 3 games to do it in. It's never going to work. As for the signing of Hodgson, it's probably a better fit for the squad, quite frankly, than Frank de Boer was. At least you can say that as a positive. I don't rate him massively as a manager, but I think he'll probably get more positive results than Frank de Boer will.
He's a pragmatist, isn't he? And he's had successful stints at mid-table Premier League clubs before, obviously with West Brom, and Fulham kept West Brom up in that season he was there. Pato, what do you make of the situation? The summer recruitment wasn't exactly inspiring, as Joe said, was it?
It didn't really make sense for me. I mean, you look at other teams and they managed to find decent players at low cost. I mean, like we see Tarkowski at Burnley, or someone like Wesley Hood going to Southampton. They managed to find cheaper centre-backs than 28 mil for Sakho. Now, I like Sakho, but I think that Palace need to do a lot of surgery to their squad if they wanted to change into a De Boer side. De Boer wants to defend by keeping the ball. Allardyce wanted to defend by putting men between the ball and the goal. Those are completely different ways of doing things. Yeah. So you need guys who are comfortable on the ball, who can play it around, and it just really doesn't make sense to me at all. I mean, Palace have basically said, by hiring De Boer, it was like they said, we're going to be possession side in the future. That's how we see ourselves. And now by hiring Hodgson, they're saying, oh no, God, we just need anybody who will keep us up. And so that just shows me that nobody's thought it through. I don't think there's been thinking at any stage in this. I don't think Palace have been as bad as bottom of the league. Have they been good? No, I don't think that they've been dreadful. You look at them and they're taking more shots on target, shots from closer in than most of their opponents. Yeah, I mean, like, Palace, they haven't scored, so things look dreadful, but have they deserved not to score? Have they created no scoring chances? Of course they haven't. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's just the sort of thing that these clubs do, and it's the sort of thing that actually takes them down eventually. They do it in a panic, and they make bad decisions in a hurry, and that's what gets you relegated.
Yeah, for me, this smacks of short-termism, a little bit like the contract. By the time it finishes, Roy Hodgson will be 72, so sporting director Dougie Freeman will already have to be thinking, listen, who's going to be in charge at the end of this? Dougie Freeman's a little bit of a strange one as well, wasn't he? Ex-Palace manager, bought in a week before the transfer market closed. De Boer, not sure that he would have taken that too kindly. You hear have some underhand things taking place as well, like first-team squad members going directly to Parish to complain. The likes of Damien Delaney, the likes of Martin Kelly, who were told that they were a little bit surplus to requirements at the start of the season. So yeah, I think it was just a perfect storm for Frank de Boer. Knee-jerk reaction from the Palace board. But are they the worst-run club in the Premier League? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Next question comes from Jaden Sutar May on my Twitter feed, and he's asked, boys, how will Barcelona cope now Dembele has suffered that injury? Now, he's injured a tendon in his thigh, apparently, which means he's out for 3 months. Pato, if you're Ernesto Valverde, how greatly does this concern you?
I mean, it concerns you a bit. You spent 130 mil on him to replace Neymar, so that's not ideal. I mean, the temptation, and I know Joe's going to say it, is to say that Barcelona are
I'm not going to say that.
He is going to say that.
I am actually not going to say that. So
he'll use a different word for but the fact is, being on your Barcelona is a relative term, right? So they're still going to win basically all their home games. They're still probably going to come at least second in the league. They'll still get to the second round of the Champions League. The problem is what happens then. Dembele will have to come back, and he's basically had no time to integrate into the team, so he's going to be doing that in the middle of the season. In the meantime, I don't think that the replacements are of comparable standard. I don't think anybody would. But Barcelona still have a bunch of good players. You know, you can come up with a system that requires less kind of width from those guys. You can play Iniesta in a wide role where he's obviously actually not going to stick to the wing. You can use Rafinha, and so I think that Barcelona can still put together a pretty competent side that's going to win basically every home game this season.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's going to have any effect at all, really.
At all. Great.
Obviously, it'll have an effect in the long term, but in the short term, I don't think it's going to have a massive effect, because I think that Dembele might well have taken two odd months to settle into that Barcelona team before he found his top form anyway.
Sure.
So that is going to affect him in the long term. Like I said, back end of the season, you might see Dembele not quite hitting the form he would have if he'd had these opening months. But he would have taken a while to settle into that team anyway, let's have it right. And if he's missing these games, I think they would have had to rely on Messi and Suarez to score goals and get assists anyway, 90% of the time. So just means that extra 10%, 20% is going to have to be covered by the likes of Paulinho. Maybe De La Feu has to chip in with a couple of goals. Paulinho has started the season really, really well.
Yeah.
As much as everybody mocked him, I was one of the mockers. He started well, and you can't
Our
detract
mockery
from
is
that.
more so at the price of the player, right? Than the player
true.
he's capable of being. 'Cause
True,
I've
but-
always sort of said, for Brazil, more specifically, he's impressed.
100%.
Two
But
goals in two.
exactly, and we've seen Valverde almost play in a 4-4-2 system at times, so you could argue that where does Dembele fit into that 4-4-2? Maybe he would be one of the odd pieces out. He's better in a 4-3-3 as an actual out-and-out winger, Dembele, I would suggest.
I think he'd play the 4-3-3 with Dembele,
With Dembele,
right?
4-4-2
Because,
without.
as Pato pointed out, he's been playing Iniesta, Busquets, Rakitic and De La Feu in that 4-4-2 in midfield, and it's worked to great effect against Espanyol.
Well, Messi looks incredible.
And that 6-1 result last night. Well, Messi, here's a little fact for you. Barcelona are taking 16 shots a game so far this season. Messi is taking around half of them every single game.
Messi has scored 12 goals in September. So far, I actually think this is the best month he has ever had in football. I don't think he's ever scored across his entire career more than 12 goals in a single month. If he carried on this rate, he would be on for 144 goal 2016, 17, 18, whenever dates were in.
That season, yeah. And he was phenomenal against Eibar last night, wasn't he? Obviously routed them 6-1. Pato, few of the players on the periphery, particularly last season, the likes of Denis Suarez, the likes of maybe Vidal, coming to the fore, aren't they? Showing a bit of improved form. Paulinho showing the naysayers that he can contribute at this level. And Semedo, I've been impressed by him so far.
Well, Semedo's a good player. I mean, I wouldn't put him in the same category as Denis Suarez or Alex Vidal. I mean,
You put him worse or better?
he's much better. He's got. I mean, Denis Suarez is talented, but I don't think he's Barcelona standard in the long term. I think Semedo is. I don't think Alex Vidal is Barcelona standard in the long term.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they're not useful players. Like, Barcelona didn't buy duds, except in the case of Andre Gomes and Lucas Digne. They bought guys who are just not quite good enough for Barcelona, which is not the worst crime in the world. I think that they'll get some goals, some assists. I mean, the problem is it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Okay, Messi being as good as he is at the moment. A couple of seasons in a row, Messi missed a stretch in the autumn, and Neymar would carry the team. Like, Neymar had a couple of months 2 years ago where he was as good as Messi for a couple of months. The difference with Messi is he's done that for a decade before you go mental.
Okay.
So if he gets injured this time, if his form drops off, if a team decides to mark him out of the game, I don't know what Barcelona do. That's the issue.
Although that Barcelona-Juventus game kind of highlighted to me the fact, I know we all know this, but he is unmarkable. It is impossible to mark Lionel Messi out of a game. It cannot be done.
It has been done.
I mean, they did a bit of a job on him for the first 45. I think he scored with his first touch in the Juve box, and that was on 43.
fine. That's the job.
And maybe it's not possible to do it in the first 10 games of the season, but when he's been playing basically every game and it's December, then suddenly it becomes a little bit easier.
I take your point.
That's the issue. They can't rest him.
What I will
Who
say
have they got?
is he is going to play. He's going to miss the El Clasico. He's going to miss El Clasico, but equally, I would back, like you said at the start, Barca to win every other game without him.
Well, their next run of games is Girona, Sporting, Las Palmas, Atletico, and then Olympiacos.
Yeah, the Atletico game's
not
tough.
the worst spell for Dembele to miss, really, barring that Atletico game. Not sure if it's home or away, should have done my homework. But that's the toughest game out of that run-in. And as you say, I think they'll be fine with those sort of squad players for the time being. But when you get to the last 16 of the Champions League, you could always use a Dembele. When the Champions League teams drop into the Europa League...
That scared the shit out of me. Oh my God.
Last but not least, we have a question from Bruno Lucas on Twitter, and he's asked, why does the Europa League have such a poor reputation in England? Now, I, for one, quite like the Europa League. Different flavour of away days. You know, if Celtic get third in the Champions League, so be it. European football after Christmas. And when the Champions League teams drop into the competition, it's actually pretty credible. And it's produced some memorable matches in recent years, like that Dortmund-Liverpool game. I mean, I can see you two shaking your heads. You're a Manchester United fan, so last year you won the Europa League, and I can assure you it meant a lot to you.
100%.
You're an Arsenal fan this year. Arsenal are in the Europa League, so very well qualified to comment on this question. Gentlemen, please, one of you take the floor.
Look, the reason that the Europa League has such a poor reputation in England is because it f***s teams in the Premier League, and when you f*** teams in the Premier League, the monetary rewards are too much, and too much risk is involved for the Premier League teams to care about the Europa League. If Southampton or an Everton get to the latter stages of the Champions League and that results in them finishing 14th or 15th in the league, it's not worth it for them. Monetary-wise, it's not worth it. From a footballing perspective, from a fan's point of view, I can assure you that it is worth it, but in the boardroom, they are saying to each other, we concentrate on the Premier League.
So
that's
just to give
guaranteed.
That a bit of context, you got 12 million for winning the trophy last year.
Who cares about
Whereas
that?
Champions League participation is worth around 30 to 40 million, even in the group stages. So they have expanded the format, haven't they? But sort of devalued it monetary-wise at least. However, Pato, still some great away days in there, no? Red Star Belgrade.
You must be looking forward to that, mate.
Well, I mean, I don't really have an issue with it. Like, we've played terrible teams in the Champions League as well.
Yeah.
We've played terrible teams
Man
every
United's
season.
group in the Champions League.
Well, yeah, it's embarrassing. And Chelsea's as well, my God. But this is the thing. I think that football fans all want to pretend like they know about all the important stuff that's going on in football, right? And so when you haven't seen a team play, you assume they're rubbish. And nobody watches the Europa League. And so everybody in England assumes that it's rubbish. And I think the issue with this is that it's on a Thursday night.
Yeah, I completely agree.
People watch football Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they know it's over until the weekend. If you reversed it so that Champions League was on Wednesday and Thursday and the Europa League was on Tuesday, then people would watch it as a kind of warm-up to the Champions League games because they still want to watch football in midweek.
So you're saying it's an afterthought?
Yeah, at the moment, basically, people are like, Champions League's over, and now I have a couple of days rest before the weekend. And if you don't watch it, you assume it's rubbish because you're like, well, if it was good, I'd be watching it.
Yeah.
So
Thursday's the worst.
I mean, yeah, that Dortmund-Liverpool game last season, I ended up turning that on halfway through it just because I was bored, and I was just like, this is absolutely amazing. Teams who've been in it, who've done well in it, you know, Man United, Roma, Lyon, these are teams who are some of the most interesting sides in Europe, but you just don't watch them. And so I think it's actually a pretty good competition, but I've never watched it because by Wednesday night, I'm just like, F football, I don't care.
Less predictable as well, right? I think only 6 teams have dominated the Champions League since it was reformatted. I think the likes of...
You say that though, Sevilla.
Yeah, I was about to say, predictability is not something that...
Yeah, the likes of Real Madrid have won twice as many games in the Champions League as AC Milan, who have won it 3 times. I know Sevilla won the Europa League 3 times, but I'm going to skate over it.
Yeah, well, I also think that the biggest problem with the Europa League is that for a top 4 team in the Premier League, it's only just come in that gives you, if you win the Europa League, it qualifies you for a Champions League. That's only just come through the door. That should have been years ago. That should have come.
Bit of a game changer, isn't it?
That's a massive game changer. Like Man United last year, I guarantee you, Jose Mourinho would have that trophy off if it meant we were going to qualify for the top 4 in March. 100%, but instead he went for the Europa League. He thought it was an easier route of getting Champions League qualification, and he turned out that he was correct. And United won the trophy, obviously, also won a League Cup.
Almost lost to Celta Vigo, didn't you?
Almost lost to John Guidetti.
John Guidetti, that's it.
But I will say that now that you can qualify for the Champions League, English teams will start taking more of an interest. Big English teams anyway. Smaller English teams like Southampton and Everton couldn't give two f***s.
Well, they've struggled in the Europa League anyway, as it is. Everton barely qualified, embarrassing. Anyway, do you think the Europa League is a good tournament? Let us know in the poll just above Joe's Bonds. So that was this week's Continental Club, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, if you've got a question you'd like us to answer, get it in on a various form of social media. Patrick Van Straten, what's happening elsewhere? Maybe outside.
Yeah, we've got a new channel, 90+1 Facts,
And his
where you
face
can
is
get
buzzing about
91 facts about various topics. Barcelona, Real Madrid, the Champions League, the Premier League, Leo Messi's coming up, Cristiano Ronaldo. If you want to know everything there is to know, I promise, every fact about Cristiano Ronaldo, then subscribe to 90+1 Facts right now. It's really good.
Joe?
Not like this.
This
No one
goes
cares.
out.
And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.
Rude.
Yay.